Let's all say Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So after 35 days, the ship came to Boston, and then, as I mentioned, Prabhupada did write a poem, Markine Bhagavad-Dharma, which means in English, Teaching Krishna Consciousness in America. And then the ship the next day went down on the 18th of September 65 to New York, where Prabhupada got off the ship for good. And he came down the gangplank, and then Prabhupada told us, I didn't know whether to turn left or right. But luckily the Agrawals had sent a man from Traveler's Aid, a Mr. Forster, who took Prabhupada to the Port Authority bus terminal, which is pretty bewildering. It's a big bus station on 42nd Street, New York City. And Prabhupada got on the bus, Greyhound bus, and he went all the way across New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a long state. And he finally came to Butler, Pennsylvania about 2 o'clock in the morning. And Old Faithful, Gopal Agrawal was there waiting for him. And he took him to the YMCA. And that was the beginning of Prabhupada's stay. So lesson 5, it's called his ISKCON branch. And after a lifetime in preparation, our Founder-Acharya's mission appears on the world scene as ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Before we examine how Srila Prabhupada manifested ISKCON in phases, let's look at and listen to his mood and mission as Srila Prabhupada expressed it upon arriving in America. And in 2009, Urmila Mataji, I think well known to you, she came to Hawaii. She was moving to Hawaii, actually, because all her children are there. And she brought with her something, because it was around the time of Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, Janmastami Vyasa Puja. She brought a recording of a Vyasa Puja offering made by a Pandava Sain, one of the UK Indian youth. And the guy was pretty tech savvy, so he made it a multimedia offering. It's a VCL program offering. The following 11-minute video was offered to Srila Prabhupada on his Vyasa Puja Day in 2009 by a young UK devotee, whom I still have to meet. I haven't met him yet, so I'd like to meet him and thank him. Though he never met Prabhupada physically, his offering is dramatic evidence that we can all meet our Founder-Acharya spiritually by serving his mood and mission. So what you're going to see in this program, it's about 11 minutes, a little over 11 minutes, it's like a moving slideshow where first you see Prabhupada's face, and then you start hearing somebody playing an instrument and singing. It's my godbrother Jai Sachinandan singing the poem Markine Bhagavad-Dharma that Prabhupada wrote on the ship. So Jai Sachi singing it, and then while he's singing it in Bengali, Prabhupada wrote it in Bengali, you see on the screen, you start to see images of Prabhupada's pastimes, starting with the Jaladuta. Pastimes meaning starting with coming to America. And then as you hear the Bengali being sung for each stanza, then you begin to see the translation for each stanza. And then it gradually fades and moves into the next stanza. So it's a very well done offering by this young devotee who never met Prabhupada physically. But that's the whole point. That even if we never met him physically, it's actually irrelevant to being close to Prabhupada spiritually.
कैले कृष्ण यथा मेरा प्रति पर कृपा कले कृष्ण यथा मेरा प्रति की लागिया नीलहता करो वे गति की लागिया नीलहता करो वे गति আছে কিছু কাজ তব এ অনুমানে আছে কিছু কাজ তব এ অনুমানে নহে কেন আনিবে এই উগ্রস্থানে নহে কেন মানিবে এই উগ্রস্থানে রজস্তম গুণেরা শোভাইয়াচন রজস্তম গুণেরা শোভাইয়াচন পাশুতে কথা রুচি নহে সে প্রশ্ন পাশুতে কথা রুচি নহে সে প্রশ্ন তবে যদি তব কৃপা হয়া হয়তুকি তবে যদি তব কৃপা হয়া কি সকল সম্ভব হয় তুমি কে দুঃখী সকল সম্ভব হয় তুমি সে কতুকি কিভাবে বুঝালে তারা বুঝে সে রস কিভাবে বুঝালে তারা বুঝে সে রস এত কৃপা কর প্রভু করি নিজ বশ এত কৃপা কর প্রভু করি নিজ বশ তোমার ইচ্ছা সব হয় মায়াব তোমার ইচ্ছা সব হয় মায়াবস্র তোমার ইচ্ছা নাশ মায়ার পরশ তোমার ইচ্ছা নাশ মায়ার পরশ তব ইচ্ছা হয় যদি তাদের দয়ুধা তবে ইচ্ছা হয় যদি তাদের দয়ুধা বুঝিবে নিশ্চয় তব কথা সে তোমার বুঝিবে নিশ্চয় তবে কথা সে তোমার ভাগবতের কথা সে তবয় অবতার ভাগবতের কথা সে তবয় অবতার ধীর হইয়া শুনে যদে কানে বা ধীর হইয়া শুনে খানে বাবা রজস্তম হাতে তবে পাইবে নিষ্ঠা রজস্তম হাতে তবে পাইবে নিষ্ঠা হৃদয়ের বজ্র গুছিবে তাহা হৃদয়ের বজ্র গুছিবে তাহা করে বুঝাব কথা বড় সে চাহি কি করে বুঝাব কথা বড় সে চাহি ক্ষুদ্রায় আমি নাহি না কোন শক্তি নাহি ক্ষুদ্রায় আমি নাহি না কোন শক্তি নাহি অতচয়ন চ প্রভু কথা বলিবারে অতচয়ন চ প্রভু কথা বলিবারে যে তোমারি চা প্রভু করবে ভারে যে তোমারি চা প্রভু করবে ভারে অখিল জগৎ গুরু বচন সে আমার অখিল জগৎ গুরু বচন সে আমার অলঙ্কৃত করিবা গমত্তা ধামার অলঙ্কৃত করিবা গমত্তা ধামার তব কৃপা হলে মন কথা শুদ্ধ হবে তব কৃপা হলে মন কথা শুদ্ধ হবে শুনিয়া সবার শোকা ধুকা যে ঘুচিবে শুনিয়া সবার শোকা ধুকা যে ঘুচিবে আনিয়াছ যদি প্রভু আমার না যাদে নাচা নাচা প্রভু নাচা সে মতে কাশের পুতলি যতা নাচা সে মতে কাশের পুতলি যতা নাচা সে মতে নাই বেদানায় নামে কুদার ভক্তি নাই বেদানায় নামে কুদার ভক্তি বেদান্ত নামে বেশাদাগর ভক্তি বেদান্ত নামে বেশাদাগর ভক্তি
What do you see in Prabhupada's face? There's no right or wrong answer. How would you describe Prabhupada's face? Raise your hand.
Compassion.
Compassion. There's so many things.
Bright, effulgent.
Fulgent. Prabhupada cared. He cared enough to come. In the 70s, 60s and 70s, especially in the West, there was a spike, an increase in the number of Guru Swamis and yogis coming to America, but they were all coming to take something. Take some fame, fortune, following. There was a reporter from Newsweek magazine when it was in print in the 70s. And because of all the interest in gurus in the mid-70s, he went to India to try to find some sage in the Himalayas. So he actually found somebody lying on the proverbial bed of nails, and the yogi spoke English. So the reporter interviewed him, was very impressed by the yogi's high insights, and then he said to the yogi, "You know, I'm a reporter, I'm a journalist, and I travel all over the world. I see a lot of suffering. Did you ever think about coming out of the Himalayas and sharing your consciousness with the world? Try to help suffering humanity?" So the yogi gave a classic yogi answer that Prahlad Maharaj kind of anticipated in the Bhagavatam. The yogi said, "It is said that the thirsty, or the well does not go to the thirsty must come to the well." Now contrast that with what Prabhupada did. Prabhupada started an irrigation project all over the world to bring Krishna consciousness everywhere. From Melbourne to Madagascar to Iceland to... So Prabhupada cared. And that's what makes him stand out above all the others. So this UK Indian devotee, I mean, he's 10 years older now. He made it in 2009. It's now 2019. He never met Prabhupada physically. But boy, has he ever met him spiritually. Right? I mean, look at the experience he gave us of Prabhupada in that 11-minute moving slideshow. So again, it's not about having met him physically or not. It's about living in the love and the light of his eternal instructions. His ISKCON branch, Tompkins Square Park. There's different photos here. This is a photo of October 1966, when... Right, but I'm just identifying. Now this was the East Village Other. There was an underground newspaper called the East Village Other, who... see, this is the East Village. This is part of the East Village, and this is Tompkins Square Park. And there's the tree. Has anybody ever been to Tompkins Square Park? If you ever have a chance to go to New York City, you must visit 26 Second Avenue, Tompkins Square Park. Now there's a sign right here that says Hare Krishna tree. And there's a fence kind of over here. Oh, this is a more recent shot. There's 3 aspiring Vaishnavis hugging the tree. This is Prabhupada at the time in 66. And when people see that, when they would see that photograph, they would say things like, "He's so high, he got to hold his head to keep from flying away." Stay high forever, right? So right here, there's a fence now, and there's a big plaque. A former mayor named Michael Bloomberg put the plaque there because New Yorkers are very proud, actually, of the fact that the Hare Krishna movement started in New York City, because New Yorkers pride themselves on being able to accommodate and absorb any kind of exotic phenomenon. And we were pretty exotic in the 60s. So the plaque, it's a brass plaque, and it says, this is the Hare Krishna tree. This is where A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami started the Hare Krishna movement in 1966. And then it goes on to glorify all the other elm trees. This is an elm tree, an American elm tree, And this park has it's one of the finest collections of American elm trees in America, so they're very proud of that too. So the last time I was at the tree was 2012. I was sitting on the benches, and I was just I had all my rounds to chant, because I was presenting that night at 26 Second Avenue. Just one lesson. I mean, yeah, you can imagine what it's like to present there, right? It's so, even to this day, it's a very powerful place. So as I was chanting my rounds, I would see people once in a while. I would see devotees come in from different parts of the world into the park, bow down to the tree, circumambulate the tree. Sometimes they were hugging the tree. And I can't imagine what the public was thinking. You know, what is this tree, right? But it really is a tirtha. It really is a holy place. Prabhupada said, this is the beginning of my outdoor preaching in America. This person became Kirtanananda, this person became, Ramananda. This is Robert Nelson. He never took initiation. He was one of the first people, the first American to befriend Prabhupada when Prabhupada was alone on the Bowery. And he was kind of a funny guy, eccentric guy, but he liked Swamiji, so he would, do things for him, but he never took initiation. Anyway, that's the famous shot, and Prabhupada saw that article, he loved it, he read it. So 10 years later, in 1976, this is 66, while celebrating New York City's first Rath Yatra, Srila Prabhupada compared ISKCON's appearance at 26 Second Avenue to Lord Bohr's advent from Brahma's nostril, from tiny to titanic in no time. So what happened was, Prabhupada had Jayananda Prabhu drive Prabhupada around New York City, and so Prabhupada was showing the devotees where he used to be, where he used to sort of wander on the Lower East Side when he was all alone. And here's the Paradox restaurant. It was a macrobiotic restaurant. Here's the Paragon bookstore where Prabhupada put his Bhagavatams on consignment to a Mrs. Ferber, whom he would kind of bribe with. Prabhupada was cooking samosas. And the books weren't moving very fast, so she, naturally they just want to put books in there that are going to sell. But Prabhupada would, just give it one more month, so he'd bring her samosa, and she liked samosas, so she let the book stay for one more month. And then she gave a little testimony to us. She said, sometimes he would ask me for a glass of water. So if it were anybody else, I would just say, well, look, the water cooler's over there. But because of him, because he was such a sweet, holy man, I would get him whatever he wanted. He charmed Mrs. Ferber. So Prabhupada took them around Tompkins Square Park and Washington Square, and then they came to 26 Second Avenue, and that's where Prabhupada made this. It's a one-of-a-kind analogy, right? Just like Varahadev appeared from Brahma's nostril, similarly ISKCON has appeared from this. It's to this day, it's a little hole in the wall. It's just a little tiny place. And quickly expanded, covered the earth, went all over the world. So Prabhupada, and that was no accident, because behind that expansion, that amazing Hare Krishna explosion, there was a plan. Prabhupada had a plan. Srila Prabhupada's plan behind ISKCON's rapid expansion had 7 purposes. So this is rather famous. We've all maybe heard of them or seen them on the database. This is an early ISKCON picture. See, 26 Second Avenue was the storefront. And then if you walked out the side door of the storefront, and then you walked right again, there was a courtyard in back of 26 Second Avenue, and then there was apartments. So Prabhupada had an apartment up there. 2C, that was apartment 2C. And so here's, in the courtyard, between the storefront and the apartments, there appears to be a bird bath and a birdhouse, and so somebody must have asked Swamiji to he could take a snap, and Prabhupada is kindly obliging him. This is a very early ISKCON. Look at Prabhupada's wearing, very, simple cloth and nothing fancy like later on we would get him silks and all this stuff and sweaters. And so when Prabhupada incorporated ISKCON on 13th July 1966, he was obliged by the law to state the purposes of the non-profit religious corporation. And if you've never seen them, we're going to just read a few words from each purpose, just enough to get the gist. So where's the mic? Okay, want to start reading? Okay, number 1. And the first one does kind of read like that purpose we saw in the League of Devotees. That was kind of like a rehearsal, and this is the final draft.
To systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and to educate all peoples in the techniques of spiritual life.
Right. 2.
To propagate a consciousness of Krishna as it is revealed in the Bhagavad-Gita.
And then it says, and Srimad Bhagavatam and allied literatures. 3.
To bring the members of the society together with each other and nearer to Krishna.
And then Prabhupada says, nearer to Krishna, the prime entity, it says. Number 4.
To teach and encourage the Sankirtan movement, the congregational chanting of the holy name of God.
Right, as propounded by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Number 5.
To erect for the members and for society at large a holy place of transcendental pastimes.
So this is a little different. So just like in New Vrindavan, Prabhupada told Kirtananda Swami, you have to build 7 temples on 7 hills. And you also have to practice plain living and high thinking. So this is an indication of erecting holy places. 6.
To bring the members closer together for the purpose of teaching a simpler and more natural way of life.
There's a hint of Prabhupada's Varnashram aspect. And to support the whole thing, as its point, have you read The Family Business by Vaisheshika Prabhu? It's really a must-read. It's a great book. It's all about not just book distribution, but it's about just how to give people Krishna consciousness. So here's purpose 7.
With a few towards achieving the aforementioned purposes, to publish and distribute periodicals, magazines, books, and other writings.
Right. Prabhupada saw the family business would be book publication, distribution, and that would support everything else. And of course, he approved, and you folks have done it up very nicely, prasadam restaurants, and any business that would support the movement, but especially because the purposes of ISKCON can all be really subsumed under what heading? Education. It's really an educational movement. To systematically propagate spiritual knowledge. It's directly and indirectly all about education. Brihan Mridanga, that's the, distribution. Okay. So, now that was in July 66, but as early as March, when Prabhupada didn't even have his own place, when he was on the Bowery in that loft room, Prabhupada was visited by an attorney named Stephen Goldsmith, who he liked to work for to try to help non-profit religious groups legally. So in March 1966, before Srila Prabhupada moved from the Bowery to the Lower East Side, Prabhupada was consulting an attorney about incorporating, quote, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He didn't have anything. He didn't have a place to live even. And he's talking about an international society. So when friends suggested, and this was Goldsmith actually, when friends suggested Srila Prabhupada use the more familiar term God consciousness, Prabhupada replied that, quote, God was too vague, and that he had come to reveal Krishna as the, quote, Supreme Personality of Godhead. That was how Prabhupada rendered Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Further, Krishna consciousness was Srila Prabhupada's rendering of Rupa Goswami's phrase, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Matehi. which means, quote, to be absorbed in the mellow taste of executing devotional service to Krishna. And Prabhupada just said Krishna consciousness. In July, after Srila Prabhupada got his own place at 26 2nd Avenue, he incorporated ISKCON with those 7 purposes. Prabhupada's plan, 7 purposes in 4 phases. So he had purposes and he had a plan to gradually reveal those purposes. And this is the slide that I mentioned before when the Butler Eagle newspaper came out to Sally Agrawal's townhouse, and so they did an article on Swamiji and they took a picture. Now look, Prabhupada is standing in front of what appears to be some kind of oriental artwork on the Agrawal's wall. And what's he holding? It's Bhagavatam. He's a man, we say in America, he's a man with a plan. His gaze is very steady, fixed. He hasn't come to America to go to Disneyland or the Grand Canyon or Niagara Falls. He's come to give, he's come to teach. So that's what is communicated there in Prabhupada's gaze. Humble and determined. Srila Prabhupada is truly, quote, a man with a plan. Now, it was my godbrother, His Holiness Bhakti Raghava Swami. Does he ever come here? No? He, in 1984, when Mayapur was attacked, he had his leg blown off by a hand grenade or something. So he's a big, his mission in the mission, so to speak, is promoting Varnashram rural communities. He's from Canada. And so it was Bhakti Raghava Swami who went into Prabhupada's pre-USA writings and identified or discovered Prabhupada's four-phase plan in Prabhupada's letters to India's leaders and also in Prabhupada's Indian BTG articles after Gandhi was assassinated. Remember, Prabhupada was trying to use Gandhi when Gandhi was alive. He approached Gandhi with that letter. Let's have some deeper talks on Bhagavad-Gita, and in this way we can revolutionize the world. And then Gandhi got assassinated, but Prabhupada is still trying to use Gandhi's name to make some spiritual revolution. With that first name he gave to his mission was the Gita Nagari, the village where the Bhagavad Gita is sung and lived. So now we're going to see how Prabhupada, he accomplished those 7 purposes in 4 phases, which he manifested differently according to the time, the country, and the people. So I actually gave names to these phases. Prabhupada didn't name it like this, but you'll see in the pre-USA writing. First we're going to look at pre-USA evidence of the phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll see how those phases manifested in ISKCON. So it's pretty interesting. Is ISKCON branch. Okay, I call the first phase Holy Names and Holy Books. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Leaders and politicians may take lessons from the life of Mahatma Gandhi. In respect of his daily evening prayers, meetings, and regular recitation of Bhagavad-Gita, reciting the Gita makes one able to get rid of all the demonic way of life and gradually raising up the plane of pure devotional life of the gods.
Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi, he was well known for his prayer meetings. In fact, he was shot just after a prayer meeting, and in which he would refer to the Gita, and they were doing some chants, mantras. So that was Gandhi. Now this is in a BTG piece. That year, 1956, Prabhupada produced 12 issues of BTG when he was penniless. But he left his family and he was trying to work with his godbrothers in their mutts, and he was working on his BTG. Let's look at ISKCON application of that phase.
Holy names, from temple kirtans to Harivan Sankirtan in the streets, parks, places, arenas and beaches of the world.
yeah, we became famous for always chanting on the street corners, right? And people wanted to know, what is this? And we became known as the Hare Krishna people because we were always chanting Hare Krishna. And it started, it started right in that 26 Second Avenue storefront. And then in the fall, Prabhupada really surprised the devotees. He said, now we're going to take the chanting outside. And they were terrified. They thought they were just going to be with Swamiji huddled in this little magic room, with the Swami. And then Swamiji said, well, now we're going to go outside. And so they all followed Swamiji outside, and Prabhupada's lifted, his head was always held high in the air. And Prabhupada knew that people were going to make fun and call bad names and throw things, but he didn't care. He was determined to take it outside. And so he would sit on the carpet and with that little bongo drum in 26 Second Avenue and at Tompkins Square Park. And that was already a place where kind of alternative types, counterculture types were gathering to make music and get high and preach, revolution and all this stuff. So Prabhupada, exotic followers, and himself being the most exotic of all, they sat down on the rug. You've probably seen the films. Prabhupada chanting, fixed, and then all these people dancing around him. So that's how it started. And then, then it expanded. Like you have so many, we have so many, festivals all over the world. You have Indradyumna Swami singing the Baltic Sea coast, where he goes up and down the coast. There's so many places in the world now where Hare Krishna people are chanting Hare Krishna. So that's holy names. It started right in the storefront. And then
Holy books, from temple classes to systematic courses, from BTG distribution to book distribution.
Yeah. So when Prabhupada started ISKCON, those first seekers were coming, the hippies, and when they started getting serious about, at first they just came to eat because Swamiji was always cooking for everybody, and serving out of his own hand, and they wouldn't even stay to help him wash the pots. He had to do everything. And then as they began to realize this is such an exalted person, they wanted to do something. So then they started cleaning up, and so then some of them started moving in, to the storefront, because they didn't have jobs, a lot of them, because they were allergic to work. A couple had jobs, like Steve became Satsarup. He was a welfare worker. Rupanuga was also a welfare worker. Brahmananda was a teacher, school teacher. And they kept teaching and doing their jobs and supporting the storefront. So then Prabhupada had an idea. When more people started coming, he said, okay, now we're going to revive Back to Godhead. So he had stopped it, of course, before he came to America. But then when he saw that their followers needed something to do, they needed a project. So we had them start Back to Godhead. So the first BTGs, they were just mimeograph sheets. Mimeograph? It's like you hand crank it and out comes these copies. It's a real kind of primitive technology compared to today. Then they'd staple them, and then they'd go out, and distribute and ask for donations. And it was very much a Lower East Side thing. It was just a very local kind of thing. But within a couple of years, they succeeded in producing a rather slick, nicely done magazine with color and different graphics. From BTG book distribution to book distribution. So book distribution, like when I joined in July 70, so in Boston, so the whole engagement all day was, we'd go out all day in shifts to the parks, to Boston Common, Cambridge Common, Harvard Square, and the program was we'd all just sing. There was tons. It was the biggest temple in the movement at the time because the ISKCON press was there before there was a BBT. ISKCON and the artists were there. So very high-powered, bright, creative people. And we'd all go out, and then we'd all chant, and then after maybe 20 minutes, half hour, the chant would stop, and then one person would come out from the party and start, speaking to the people. People would always gather around. And it was a real, tumultuous time. There was the anti-war movement, Black Power movement, women's liberation was going on. It was so many things going on. But our Sankirtan party, especially when we started marching, it would always sweep up the people. We'd always sweep them up in our wake because we overpowered their demonstrations. And then when somebody was speaking, then other devotees would go around with BTGs in one arm and then a conch shell in the other arm. And that's where they'd put the donations, in the conch. And Giriraj Brahmachari, he was the biggest collector. I remember that summer. Sometimes he would distribute 30 back to Godheads, and come home with $30. Wow, how did you do it, Giriraj? And that summer was when Prabhupada called him to India to help with Bombay, Juhu. And the rest is history. He stayed there a long time. So
Miraj Swami is a nice book also.
Many Moons. Yeah, right. It's a good book. Have you read Many Moons, anybody? It's a great book because it's Giriraj Maharaj glorifying great disciples of Prabhupada. And it's a good thing too, because think of the Founder-Acharya like the sun, and think of his disciples and grand disciples and on as moons orbiting his sun. It's a good image to keep in mind. So in the meanwhile, Prabhupada was translating books, but we didn't know how to distribute books. All we knew was magazine, BTG, because that was something small. We just get 25 cents, something for them. That was a little easier. So we were kind of intimidated by the idea of book distribution. So the books kept piling up in the closets, So book distribution, it happened practically in spite of us. It happened by Chris's arrangement in San Francisco and Vancouver right around the same time. It was the fall 1970 and 71. In San Francisco it happened like this. That's when Jayananda Prabhu was there. That was his home base. So they went out chanting Harinam to Powell and Market, a big corner in San Francisco. And then on the way back, and distributing back BTGs. And on the way back, they stopped at a gas station to get gas. But then after the guy pumped the gas, they realized they didn't bring any money. I mean, there was very little money in those days. Well, they actually had some collections, but they figured we can't use that on gas. So anyway, but they had all these Krishna books, which had just been printed, Dainapan. These big, Krishna book was originally 2 big silver volumes. So a devotee said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir, we don't have any money. We forgot to bring our money, but we're rich in Krishna books. Our spiritual master just published the Krishna book." And by Krishna's arrangement, this guy was interested. He was a young guy looking for the truth, looking for mystical things from the East. So it was perfect. So, because they said, "Would you consider accepting a Krishna book as payment?" And so the guy said, "Yeah, I'm looking for this stuff, so I'll take your books, I'll pay for the gas, and that'll be like my payment for the books, and you get gas." So that enlivened the devotees. Wow, somebody actually would like to read books about God with a lot of Sanskrit in it, and they thought, who's going to want to read these books? So then they started going to laundromats and supermarkets, and they started doing gradually more and more books, and they wrote Prabhupada letters, and Prabhupada was so pleased that the devotees had finally caught on to how to distribute books. And Prabhupada would say, "Surely when I come to America, I must come to your center first." So then San Francisco was very proud, and they wrote a letter to LA. "See, Prabhupada's coming to our center because we know how to distribute books." And then LA said, "Oh yeah? Well, we're going to do that too." And so that began the transcendental competition, and then later there was a newsletter and that whole thing. So that's how it started. Holy names, holy books. Okay, so I call that phase 1, and because that's where it started in America. That's how it began in New York and San Francisco. Now phase 2, where's? Okay, you want to read?
Phase 2, temples and deities.
Right. Now where's Srila Prabhupada there? Vrindavan. Ram Navami, 1975 April. Prabhupada's body is very ill, but he's doing the inaugural arti for Krishna Balaram. And then afterwards, even though his body is so weak, he just steps out to the front of the stage and starts inviting everybody to come to our Krishna Balaram Mandir. This is for you, and take advantage of it. So, temples and deities. Okay, read the pre-USA, pre-ISKCON plan.
This pre-ISKCON plan. The mission of Gita Nagari must have its aim: rectify the anomalies that have entered into these centers of spiritual education and regenerate them to the sense of spiritual life through the exemplary life of devotees.
This is that same issue, May 1956. In that article, Srila Prabhupada cited Gandhi's, quote, temple entry movement to show the crucial role temples play in a spiritual revolution. Unfortunately, the temples have become, as Prabhupada wrote, rendezvous of demoniac dance. Now, I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I couldn't imagine the temples in India becoming like discos in the 1950s. I mean, Elvis Presley had just come to America in the 1950s. Elvis Presley, am I dating myself? Yeah. Rock and roll was just coming in full force in the 1950s in America. But then when I presented in some place, I forget where I was, but the devotee said, oh, I know what that is, Prabhu. When Prabhupada says rendezvous of demoniac dance, he's talking about the sahajas who start imitating the mood of the gopis when they're not really on that level. And they're just, with their grotesque gestures and expressions and movements. It's like grotesque sahaja dancing. Like one time I was in Vrindavan in Loy Bazaar, shopping, and I was sitting in a shop, and then all of a sudden down the street there came a line of old men with saris on, and they were just making these expressions and gestures really grotesque, like they were in ecstasy, but it just looked like crazy stuff, And there was an old man in back of them beating a drum. Boom, boom, boom. So I turned to the shopkeeper, I said, Gopi Bhav? So the guy got a funny look on his face, and he said, maybe a little cracked. So Prabhupada says that the temples have now become rendezvous of demoniac dance. Hence, Prabhupada's plan to regenerate the temples. From day one, Prabhupada intended ISKCON's temples to be centers of education, training, and uplifting spiritual association. Okay, and then this is the ISKCON application.
Here's ISKCON application. Temple buildings, from renting storefronts to buying churches and castles to building our own temples.
So, if Prabhupada is incorporating an international society for Krishna consciousness, he wants a world-class spiritual revolution, why would he launch it in these seedy, dumpy storefronts? Why, Why did he begin there?
To attract the people, mass.
Couldn't he attract them more in nicer places like this?
Less expensive?
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. There was no money. When Michael Grant and James Green, James Green, or maybe it was, anyway, Mukunda, he got Prabhupada 26 Second Avenue. When this crazy guy on LSD chased Prabhupada out of the Bowery Loft, Prabhupada ran to a phone booth and called Michael, who was also coming to see Swamiji in the Bowery. And he said, Michael, can you help me? I need to get my own place. This guy has gone crazy. He's getting very violent. So Michael, who became Mukunda, he wanted to help. He really liked Swamiji. And so he knew that the best thing to do would be for him to... He knew a corner where the first copies of the Village Voice would come out first. Before anybody saw it, it hit this particular newsstand first. I think it was right by the Village Voice building. So as soon as the new issue of the Voice came out, Michael went there, got a copy, opened it up, and started combing the columns for places to rent. And he saw this place. It was 26 2nd Avenue, storefront, a Mr. Gardner, who was his name. And I think he was asking $125 a month or something rent. It was really cheap because it was really a seedy storefront. So anyway, so Michael took Swamiji there to meet Mr. Gardner. Prabhupada brought 3 of his Bhagavatams. He brought a set. And so they were negotiating right on the street in front of the storefront. And Mr. Gardner said, oh, and also here's another feature of this place after he showed the storefront. In back, there's apartments through the courtyard. So Prabhupada said, oh, that is very good. I need a place to stay too, beside the place to preach. So Mr. Gardner said, well, I'll let you have the apartment and the storefront. I think it was $185 a month. Yeah, very, very cheap, even for those days. So Prabhupada said, oh, very good. And you, Mr. Gardner, you can be one of the trustees of our society. He just starts engaging the guy on the spot. And Mr. Gardner could see that the Swami is a very distinguished person. He's a very exalted personality. And he's flattered. Oh, I can be a director or a trustee or whatever, on your society. Yes, and here's a gift for you for agreeing to become the director. So the guy takes the Bhagavatams. He's very flattered to see that now he's been gifted with these ancient texts now in English. And then Prabhupada says, and so because you're a trustee now in the society, you can give us a discount rate on the apartment and the storefront. Prabhupada is so bold, So the guy kind of, what? But he agrees. He agrees. So I think he knocked $20 off I think it was $165. And then when Prabhupada finally moved into his apartment, he told Michael, he said, now, before he moved in, or maybe he had already moved, anyway, he said, now you go down to the power company, it's called Con Edison, Consolidated Edison, it's a big, famous conglomerate, and you ask them, you tell them, we're a charity, so they can give us free power, free utilities, right? So Michael looked at Swamiji like, I don't know if they're going to do that, Swamiji. So he goes down there and he tries his level best, but they said, no, we don't do that. But then Swamiji went down, and he got some better rate. So right from the beginning, Prabhupada's showing his potency, Okay, so it started with these storefronts, and then by the time in the 1970s, enough devotees were joining and enough Lakshmi was coming from book distribution, enough manpower, that devotees started, they were in these crummy places, but they started eyeing these churches that were coming for sale. And that's why you have in ISKCON, sometimes you see in Dandavats or ISKCON news, oh, it's the 40th anniversary of the installation of Sri Sri Radha or Shir Chor Gopinath in Toronto, or in London, or because that was a time when Prabhupada was, when he went back to India and brought his dancing white elephants, as he called us, he started going to Jaipur, or sending the devotees there too, and buying deities and having them shipped to America. Okay, so to buying churches, like has anybody been to Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was an old Methodist church. And then, but the devotees have fixed it up, and they've made it a nice temple. But that temple room now that you know as the temple room, that wasn't the temple room originally. I think there was just some hall and the actual church, the chapel, where they'd have sermons and like that. That was, did you go to the Bhagavad-Gita Museum?
Rukmini Dwarkadish temple.
Right, but it wasn't in that big place at first. It was, when they bought the place, they brought Prabhupada to it, and they went into the chapel, which is a smaller place, in between Rukmini, you know, as Rukmini Dwarkadish's temple, and then life membership and prasadam, and Govinda's is there now. There's this place, it's called Bhagavad-Gita Museum. That was where the chapel was, and when they took Prabhupada there were still the church pews, where they sit in these wooden benches, and then the places to kneel, and then the slotted place for the hymnals, the books, the song books. So Prabhupada said, this is great. So you just let the public come in here. They can keep their shoes on. They're used to coming here. They can sit in the pews, in these long benches, and they're already used to hearing the sermon, you know, from the preacher. So just let them be comfortable and come in and then hear a talk on Krishna. See, Prabhupada, he was going for Main Street. He was going for everybody. But because his first followers were coming from the counterculture, we were only thinking that Krishna consciousness could appeal to people like us, from the hippie culture, the counterculture, the Haight-Ashbury, the Lower East Side, that kind of thing. So we didn't quite get it, but now we understand. Prabhupada he's going for everybody. You know, look at the TLVP, he's going for the whole world. So storefronts to churches, and then in Europe they were buying castles, in Germany and France. And then finally the devotees started building their own Vedic style temples. So it was a gradual evolution.
And now farms.
Farms, that's another, we're gonna come to the threshold of that phase. And then for deities, I'm going to read.
Deities, from deity paintings to importing deities to crafting deities.
Right, the first worshipable image in ISKCON at 26 2nd Avenue was when Swamiji asked Judy, who was an artist at the City College of New York, to paint a painting of a picture Prabhupada had of the Panchatattva. And so she painted that, and then that became their first worshipable image. And in the beginning of most temples, that's what it was. It was paintings. There was no deities per se, you know, like from India. To importing deities, which Prabhupada did, he shipped deities from India. And then devotees started making their own deities as they learned how to do that. But there was an exception to that, because Prabhupada always went with the flow of what Krishna wanted. So the first place was 26 2nd Avenue. That was the first ISKCON center. The second place was in San Francisco, in the middle of hippie land, in the Haight-Ashbury section of San Francisco. And a couple of Prabhupada's early followers, Melanie and Sam, who became Malati and Shyam Sundar. So one fine day, and Swamiji was starting the place, you know, with kirtan. This is how he always did it, just chanting Hare Krishna basically, and feeding people prasadam. So one fine day, Melanie, she was always looking to how to improve the looks of the storefront. So she went to an import store called Cost Plus Imports. And she saw in 3 different bins, different figurines, and they looked like Indian, something from India. So she did what we call, in the old days, she did what we call the 3-fingered discount. We didn't call it stealing. We called it liberating the merchandise from the pigs. You have to understand the cultural context. No such thing as stealing. The capitalist pigs were hoarding everything. And so she sees this interesting, and she thought maybe Swamiji would be interested in this. So she, right in her handbag, and gets back to the storefront, and she takes it out of her. She goes up to Swamiji's room, which they got a room for him just up the street. Swamiji, I found this in the import store. And then she's amazed that Prabhupada makes pranams. Ah, Lord Jagannath has come. And then he says, were there any more figurines? Oh yeah, I think there are a couple of more bins. So she goes back. Baladev and Subhadra Maharani went into Melanie's pocketbook, came back. So Melanie's boyfriend name was Sam Spearstra, and he's a man of many talents. And so, so Swamiji said, does anybody among of our people know how to carve? And so Melanie said, oh, my boyfriend can carve. So really, okay, so he came in and Prabhupada, he might have had a picture, Prabhupada made a drawing of Lord Jagannath. Oh, and the figurine was in front of him. So then Prabhupada gave the specification. Can you carve a bigger size figure out of wood? And Shyam Sundar is a woodworker, that's one of his main things. So he did. I mean, they weren't even initiated yet, or they weren't even married yet. So,
Drug addict.
Yeah, they were just coming out of the counterculture. So Shyam Sundar, when he gives his memoir, he said, so I was carving Lord Jagannath, I didn't really know. We just thought they were like Native American totem images, like totem poles. Yeah. You've seen these. So anyway, I was carving Lord Jagannath, and I had my cigarettes on top of the head. And so Swamiji walked in one day, and he saw me carving, and then he saw the cigarette pack on top of the piece of wood where the head was. And so Swamiji didn't say a word, but this is how Prabhupada expert. Prabhupada took his cane and he knocked the pack off the top of the wood, and it flew over in the corner. And so Sam got the message. It's probably not a good idea to be smoking while you're carving the deity. So that's how tolerant and patient Prabhupada was. So eventually they...
Secretary for 5 years, 9 months. 5 years and 9 months.
What about?
Personal secretary of Srila Prabhupada, Shamsundar.
He was, that's why he's writing his rhino books. He has a lot to say. So Sam and Melanie became Shamsundar and Malati, and they had an installation of Lord Jagannath in that storefront, 518 Frederick Street, and it's perfect. It was Krishna's arrangement that Prabhupada introduced deity worship in the Western world, the land of, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They think that's idol worship. They don't understand the difference between deity worship and idol worship. And so, but in the Haight-Ashbury, where everybody's experimenting with psychedelics and trying to raise their consciousness, and they're just open to anything. So these hippies would come into the temple and they'd see these interesting figures that Prabhupada installed, on this altar. And then they'd ask, hey man, who's that? That's Lord Jagannath. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then they'd see the devotees bowing down. And the devotees say, this is God. Far out, man. And they bow down too. They just follow the leaders, because the devotees were kind of like, they became the hippie religion. The press was saying, this is the hippie religion, Krishna, Hare Krishna. And Swami Bhaktivedanta was the leader of the hippie religion. So the deities snuck into the Western world through the portal, through the gate of psychedelic Haight-Ashbury. And that was the first place where there's actually forms And then, of course, it's a spread all over the world. So that was an adjustment Prabhupada made. It was a good example of how things didn't always happen in sequence, but those deities came in very early in the movement. And let's see here.
Journal made the first Rath card.
Yeah, yes. Now the next phase of Prabhupada's plan is another good example, even better example, of how Srila Prabhupada applied his plan's phases differently in different parts of the world. So there, for example, this is the old chapel, not the temple room that you might have seen in Los Angeles. It's the old chapel, where Prabhupada is initiating a god sister of mine, Vrindavan Vilasini, in 1973. There's a young Hridayananda, a young Sudama, Ramaswar, Tripurari, Karandar, Umapati. So Prabhupada's giving her the beads. And see, right away in the West, because we didn't know Krishna from the man in the moon, Prabhupada is trying to just solidify our identities as devotees, because there's no supportive culture outside these little urban communes. So the only way to be Krishna conscious in those days was to be inside one of these places. Because outside it was just a wasteland of materialism. There was no supportive culture. So Prabhupada, in the beginning, in the West, there was initiations, but there was no congregation. In the East, so here's a man who obviously knows the value of touching the lotus feet of a sadhu, because that's what he's doing. In India, well, first of all, let's take a look at pre-USA examples of initiation. Let's see here. Who's got the mic? Okay, so read that.
ISKCON plan. The third item is to take up the Harijana movement. This movement is a spiritual initiation movement, and this should be organized in such a manner that people all over the world may take interest in it.
And that's Prabhupada writing to the Deputy PM, Dr. Patel, right under Nehru in 49. Yeah. So Gandhi was famous for this Harijan. We're all Harijana, we're all children of God. And why are these caste Brahmins preventing these Bungis and Chamars from entering the temple? So that's well and good. Yes, we're all children of God. But Prabhupada took it to a deeper level. Prabhupada identified the disciplines and purifying practices of spiritual initiation as the way everyone can become fit to associate with and serve the Supreme Lord. So it's not that everybody's rubber-stamped Harijan. Okay, we're all children of God. But then how do we become fit to become an intimate associate, servitor of the Lord? That's called Diksha, and all the things that come after that. Just like Sanatana Goswami said, Prabhupada says this in Nectar Devotion, as dull, cheap bell metal can be turned into gold in an alchemical process by the addition of mercury, so a dull, gross, coarse human being can be turned into a first-class human being through the process of Diksha.
Pure devotee.
Yeah, it can happen if somebody follows the instructions of a pure devotee and agrees to be transformed. So in America, to fix devotees in Krishna, Prabhupada held initiations in phase 1. Congregations often didn't arise until years after Prabhupada had passed away, when many devotees began to move from monastic temple life to working family life. So let's go to the ISKCON application. You ready?
His ISKCON application. Initiation early in the West.
Early in the West.
Live membership early in India.
Okay, so when Prabhupada took his dancing white elephants to India at the end of 70, beginning of 71, they were a big novelty, they were a big hit, a big sensation, especially in a place that most famous was Surat, where the whole town just went on holiday and just followed the white sadhus, around the town and many programs. But after a little time, the Indian press became suspicious. Because remember, India was trying to be a neutral country in the middle of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the West. And India and Russia had a pretty close relationship. Russia has always been fascinated with Indian culture and philosophy. So the journalists began to muse out loud that perhaps these Westerners, these white elephants, they're actually CIA. Or, here's the other theory, that, they can't really be Vaishnavas because they're just, coming from this lecture back.
Show bottle.
Yeah, show bottle, or perhaps they're still high on LSD. That's why they're smiling all the time. So Prabhupada saw this, and so he did a really radical thing. He temporarily suspended Harinam Sankirtan, and that's the Yuga Dharma, right? But he stopped it temporarily, and he said, now we're going to start life membership. I'm going to show you how to approach big, important people and inspire them to get out on the ground floor of our Sanatana Dharma movement so we can actually spiritualize the whole world. So then the devotees started following Prabhupada to the homes of these crorpatis, these big business people and big people in government, and they observed how Prabhupada preached to them. Yeah, all these people, and they were becoming life members. And it was just, all they had to do was pay 1,111 rupees. I mean, that's nothing for them. And in exchange for that, they'd get a lifetime subscription to BTG. They'd get all the books that Prabhupada had already published, which wasn't too many, but then all the books that he would publish. And then if they ever traveled the world, they could stay at any ISKCON center for free.
3 days.
Yeah, 3 days, exactly right. So that was the beginning of a congregation in India right away. Whereas in the West, there was this total disconnect between the devotees in the temples and their parents and the larger society. I mean, we had already dropped out of society, and now we were dropping out of the counterculture to become devotees. We were double dropouts. So we were like outcasts. So people couldn't relate. They thought we were brainwashed zombies.
Amazing strategy. Amazing strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, so Prabhupada brought us to India to say to the Indians, you want to copy the Westerners? Copy these Westerners. They've seen the whole thing of it. They're fed up. They want some inner spiritual life. So, okay, life membership early in the West, and then what?
And now worldwide. Congregational ministry. Namahata programs. Bhakti Vriksha programs.
Yeah, we have a whole, it's now a congregational movement. It used to be like in Melbourne. I'm sure it started that way in Melbourne. Not at this address, but they were living in other addresses, and it started small, and then they finally got this place, and it was still communal, and then now it's you folks, congregational. Yes, this is, Jayapataka Swami told us, you know why I got involved in congregational development? Because if I have to come back to this world, I want to come back in a good family. So we got to build up our congregation. Okay. So let's see here. In India, by contrast, where there was still a vestige, a trace of Vedic culture, soon after Srila Prabhupada brought over his first Western disciples, he enlisted business and government leaders in his life membership program to solidify ISKCON's position with a prestigious congregation. So they became indispensable allies in the fight to secure Hare Krishna land in Juhu, and in Delhi, and in Calcutta, wherever there was big projects. In South India, he needed people on our side who had some clout, some clout in the community, and they provided that. So you're right, it was Prabhupada's brilliant strategy. Now the fourth and final phase of Prabhupada's plan embraces the whole world. We're still preparing ourselves to execute it, still qualifying ourselves to enact the fulfillment of his preaching vision. So this is Srila Prabhupada en route from the Paris airport, must have been Orly airport, en route to New Mayapur, La Nouvelle Mayapur, in La Massif Central. It's a nice area of France where there's a lot of castles. And so it is itself a castle. Anybody been to New Mayapur? Okay, it's a nice place. So it's about a 4.5 hour drive. So halfway there, Prabhupada answered the call of nature, and then he also wanted to take prasad. So they had a big picnic in this little place off the road. Okay, his pre-ISKCON plan for the fourth item. All right, Prabhu.
The fourth item is to organize the much discussed caste system as a solution to natural division of the human beings all over the world. Nationalistic division of human races is artificial, but the scientific division of the caste system by quality of work, as envisaged in the Bhagavad-Gita, is natural.
Yeah, so Prabhupada he's again writing to Dr. Patel. To properly honor Gandhi, Srila Prabhupada encouraged India's Deputy Prime Minister to assist him in promoting the Bhagavad-Gita's natural and scientific organization of humanity to bring peace to the world. Not the corrupt caste by birth of the caste Brahmins, but the natural division of people according to their quality and work. Now, prior to writing India's Deputy PM, in the wake of Gandhi's assassination, Srila Prabhupada wrote an essay envisioning a spiritual community, the Gita Nagari. Based on the Gita's teachings, Gita Nagari was to be a pastoral village where the Bhagavad Gita would be sung and lived. So here's another one, Prabhu, read that one.
When the Gita Nagari will attempt to harmonize such sweet relation between man and God, man and the world and the God, at such an auspicious time only, the United Nations' effort to establish peace in the world will be successful, or the dream of a casteless society of spiritual equality all over the world will be realized in practice.
So this whole essay, which is available on the Bhaktivedanta database, represents Prabhupada's first attempt to name and describe the mission he inherited from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. His second attempt was the League of Devotees, described in Lesson 4, and when he finally took his mission to the West in the 1960s, it rapidly came to stay on the world scene as ISKCON. Okay, so let's look at ISKCON application. Okay.
I have only done 50% what I want to do. The farm have to be done. If they are established, one ashram will be established.
Yeah, this is a famous line from an excerpt that Tamal Krishna Maharaj wrote to Harishari about what Prabhupada was telling him, Tamal Krishna, about the importance of establishing these rural communities. And here's a corroborative reference about the importance of this fourth phase, which we haven't even done yet, really. I mean, we're just sort of getting our feet wet with it. We're coming up to the threshold of it. It was Brahmananda Swami, actually, who said to Srila Prabhupada, and maybe with just a few days or weeks left, he said, Srila Prabhupada, do you have any regrets? And Prabhupada said, no, I have no lamentation. And then Prabhupada said, actually, I do have one lamentation. And then Brahmananda said, because you have not finished translating the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a good guess, because wherever Prabhupada traveled, he would just get up or stay up wherever he happened to land and dictate. It was like breathing for Prabhupada, translating work. Prabhupada replied, no, that wasn't his lamentation, that he hadn't finished the Bhagavatam. That I have not established Varnashram. And in fact, when Prabhupada was in Bhaktivedanta Manor trying to make one more world tour, which his body didn't let him do it, his real destination was Gita Nagari. I want to go to that Pennsylvania farm because they have solved the number one problem. And you think he's going to say birth, death, old age, and disease. And he says food. Because we were growing a lot of crops and milking a lot of cows, and working a lot of oxen. So Prabhupada he said, I want to sit down and teach you how to live in Varnashram. Now in the next lesson, we'll look closely at what the Varnashram phase of Prabhupada's mission is, as well as what we have to do to prepare for it. So in this lesson, we just end coming right up to the threshold of Varnashram. So when you ask your questions, don't ask anything about Varnashram, because that's the next lesson. It's really a good look at Prabhupada's Varnashram challenge. Okay, so here are the learning outcomes. Lesson outcomes. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to describe Prabhupada's mood and mission as expressed in the Vyasa Puja video that we saw, as well as what that offering tells us about how to know and be close to Srila Prabhupada. We should be able to identify ISKCON's 7 purposes, as well as its overriding purpose, which is what? Remember? It's the overarching purpose of ISKCON according to those 7 purposes. They're all indirectly or directly about, remember what we said? Education. Yes, we're in an educational movement. And we should be able to identify the 4 phases of our Founder-Acharya's plan to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide. Let's see if we remember those phases. Phase 1, what did I call it? Holy names and holy books. Phase 2? Temples and deities. Phase 3? Initiation, congregation. And they weren't always in the same order, right? Depending on what was happening. And finally, Varnashram. Okay. Transition. With a better understanding of the conception and unfolding of our Founder-Acharya's ISKCON mission, we are now ready to take a closer look at its unfulfilled phase, Varnashram, why we have been reluctant to embrace it, and what we must do to approach and realize it. Prabhupada went so far as to say, 50% of my work isn't done, but we'll look at that next time. Prabhu, Mike.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
You want to tell us something about setting up Dallas school?
I don't think that's quite relevant to this.
Education. The market Goswami, how much he gets?
The Dallas school?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I can, but are there any other questions specifically about, oh, you're right, I mean, it does relate, but, okay. So I happen to be in Dallas. You know Dallas?
Texas.
Texas, where they shoot first and ask questions later. That's where Kennedy was assassinated, in Dallas, Texas. Did you know that? Okay.
I've seen the place where it was shot.
You were there? Yeah, me too. Yeah. So in September '72, Prabhupada went to Dallas to install the deities. Beautiful blackish Kalachandji, big head, big arms, Texas-sized deity. I believe Prabhupada found that deity in Jaipur. It was in a store, and it was just, you know, it was just there. It was kind of neglected. Anyway, so it came. It's a whole history of how it got to Dallas, but it came, and then Prabhupada found a suitable Radharani, and I think Prabhupada had visited Dallas once before. Anyway, he came, and we didn't know he was going to do the inaugural arti, but first there was initiation ceremonies, and then Prabhupada kind of stepped off his Vyasasana, and then sometime later the curtains open, and there's Prabhupada on the stage, and he's doing Achman. And I'll always remember this because it's the only time I ever saw Prabhupada do arti. And he did it very meditatively. He was meditating on different parts of the deity's body. And then after Prabhupada offered the water, he did something that I had never seen before. He took the water from the water conch, and he stepped out to the front of the stage, and he started pouring the water into his hand, and he started throwing it at the congregation. So we were just like going crazy, as we all ran up to the front, and we started leaping up in the air, and you could feel these drops of water coming from Prabhupada's lotus hand. And it felt like the whole scene was like the first verse of Gaurvastikam. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material existence. So we felt like that's our material lives were being extinguished by these drops. Yeah, but how that, even before that inaugural arti, Prabhupada on a morning walk prior, there's this big lake in Dallas called White Rock Lake. It's where a lot of wealthy people live around this lake. They have these big mansions around the lake. And there's a nice park, public park, closer to the lake. And then, so Prabhupada's asking about if everything's ready for the deity installation. And somebody mentions, I think it was Satsru Maharaj, he was the GVC there. Yes, except devotees, one devotee is repainting the deities. And Prabhupada said, what? I never authorized that. Who's repainting the deities? And he said the artist's name, and well, I have to speak to her at once. And so they got back to the temple and he called in my god sister Janava. And Prabhupada just starts yelling at her. Who told you to do this? I'm your spiritual man. I never told you to do this. And she said, well, I was in LA and Bharadraj, who was an artist, Bharadraj, he told me if the deities need painting, how to touch them up with a special paint. And then Prabhupada made him even madder. He said, Bharadraj, I'm your spiritual master. I'm right in front of you. You're telling me Bharadraj told you how to repaint the deities. This is nonsense. So Prabhupada said, you people are not ready for deity worship. Syamasundar, pack our bags. We're leaving immediately. So it became a very stormy thing. You know, we heard that Prabhupada was furious. And so what Prabhupada really wanted, he was testing us. He really wanted Janava to say, and anyway, it went back and forth, and Satsru Maharaj sort of pacified Prabhupada a little bit that Janava didn't really know that she wasn't supposed to do that. She thought she was just following instructions from higher authorities. She didn't know that Prabhupada had to personally give permission. So then he asked Janava, so what's to be done? And so Janava, I mean the whole time, she was only a 19-year-old girl, very talented artist, and she had been sobbing and she was just beside herself with grief. So she was sincere, so she said, well, I talked to Bharadraj again, and he said that if we want to restore it to what it was, then we can remove the paint this way and then add the paint, the special paint that way. And that's what Prabhupada wanted to hear, something practical. Because Prabhupada was very practical. So she did that, and then when the installation came, as so often happened in ISKCON, just as Prabhupada's walking in the room, the temple room, the last bit of dust is being swept out the other side of the room, and the last bit of paint is drying on the walls, or is drying on the deity. And so very often when you walked into early ISKCON temples, they smell like incense and wet paint. That's what you smelled a lot. So anyway, Prabhupada did that arti, I'll never forget it. Every time I do arti, like I've been offering Guru Puja arti, and I always think of how Prabhupada was very meditative on the different parts of the body, and I try to be very deliberate and meditative. But those deities are much beloved in Dallas because what Tamal Krishna Maharaj did in later years after Prabhupada left, he turned that whole building, it had been a church and then a basketball court. So where the deities are now, if you ever go to Dallas, it's such a beautiful, Vedic style temple now. But just try to imagine that room that's now the temple room used to be a basketball court.
And a huge library.
Huh?
Next door, huge library.
Huge?
Library.
Library?
Yeah, books.
What about?
Bookstores next to the temple.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you go to Dallas now, they have Kalachandji's restaurant. It's the most famous vegetarian restaurant in Dallas. And they have a good gift shop and a library. It's the favorite of people who want to eat veg in Dallas. The Dallas Morning News, the biggest paper in the southwest of the United States, always gives it #1.
Next to NASA.
Hmm?
Next to NASA.
Yeah, they're close. Well, NASA's Houston more, but also Dallas.
Very close.
Now, I have to tell you one thing about when Prabhupada came to Dallas that time. I've told this on my memories, on the memory series, but it was an extraordinary thing. When Prabhupada flew from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Dallas, Texas, he flew into a place called Love Field, which is still there. It's still an operating airport. It's been kind of replaced by this place called Dallas-Fort Worth International. But Prabhupada flew into Love Field, and immediately when he landed, he was escorted into this room in the airport. It's called the VIP room for a press conference. So this may have been Prabhupada's first, no, it was a second visit. Anyway, Prabhupada was coming, because he had established a school. He was coming to, check the school. And so, I never seen Prabhupada do this, but when they escorted him into the room, there was a makeshift asana, and so he just hopped up on the seat, and without any Hare Krishna or thank you very much for coming, or he just said this: so there are 3 ways to fly. He just says that, just out of nowhere. There are 3, and I'm standing next to a reporter from the Dallas Morning News, this big, tall lady with her pad, there was no digital devices then. And so I could see she had written 3 ways to fly. 3 ways to fly. So, Prabhupada said, formerly yogis knew how to vibrate mantra, and just by vibrating mantra, they could dip in the Ganga in the Himalayas and come out hundreds of kilometers downstream.
To Cape Comorin. Cape Comorin.
Or Cape Comorin, way down, as far as they wanted to go. Later on, our scientists, the late great Sariputta Prabhu, told me how yogis can do that, because they're accessing the super soul, the yogis. That's their goal, to get in touch with the super soul. And the super soul is everywhere. So when they please the Lord in the heart can give them access to any point in space and time. So they can go by vibrating mantra and appeasing the super soul. They can go down and then, they can come up way down there. So the lady's 3 ways to fly, and then she writes mantra. Because that had also passed into the language, mainly from Maharishi, mantra meditation. And then Prabhupada said, and also formerly pigeon. Prabhupada said the word pigeon. There's another word in the Bhagavatam, I think it's kopota, or something like that. A special kind of bird, when they fly in formation, they can carry a human from one place to another, like a magic carpet, Simply by flying in formation, there was a special kind of bird that could carry people from one destination to another. So she's writing pigeon. Of course, she's thinking these city pigeons. She's thinking these guys that eat the refuse. But it's some special species of bird, So mantra, pigeon, and then Prabhupada says, and then you're a machine. So this lady raises her pen and she says, these different ways to fly that you're telling us, Swamiji, were they more efficient than today's 747s, jumbo jets? And Prabhupada says, oh yes. For one thing, there were no, and then Prabhupada couldn't think of the word, and he leaned over to Satsvarup Maharaj and he said, how do you say that, Satsvarup? Jack highs? Hijacks, Prabhupada, hijacks. And the first skyjacking had just happened, because Prabhupada was up on the news. There was a PLO terrorist from the Palestinian Liberation Organization. They were so upset with the Israelis, the Palestinians and the Israelis. They were perpetually at each other's throats. They had gone into the Olympic Village in Munich, Germany, and killed and murdered in cold blood the entire Israeli Olympic team. It was a big, horrendous thing. And then they escaped by called it skyjacking a plane. So Prabhupada said, there were no hijacks. And so the lady, these reporters are always trying to get an angle on it, some sensational story. So she wasn't about to be shut down with that. So she said, well, Swami, if you know all these different ways to fly, then why did you fly American Airlines today? Because Dallas is the hub of American Airlines. And without missing a beat, Prabhupada looks at her very charmingly and says, to be one with you. So the lady's totally charmed. She looks at me and she says, I like that man. Prabhupada always knew what to say, because as I said before, he not only answered content, he answered intent. He knew the mentality of the people. He knew how to charm them, basically, with words, and also he used his hands, like mudras. He could accent his points with his hands.
Artistic. Very artistic.
Yeah, aristocratic, artistic. So that was a very busy time in Dallas. Prabhupada, he was giving a class on the second canto verse of the Bhagavatam, and he walked out of the temple room, that basketball court still. He walked to the other building where he had his quarters, and there was a courtyard in between. It's where Kalachandji's is now. And he saw a tree stump where devotees had cut down a tree. And so Prabhupada took his cane, he pointed to the cane, he said, who has done this? And so one devotee starts explaining, well, Srila Prabhupada, the tree, this is a heavy oak tree, Srila Prabhupada, and it was leaning on the building. We thought it was hurting the building. So we cut it, made it. And so Prabhupada just was so disgusted. Because in India, they build temples around trees, right? They don't, they let the living things grow. So Prabhupada said, you Americans, you're totally useless. Your only qualification is money. And if you don't like something, you take your money and you cut it down. And then he just finished lecturing on the verse in the second canto about materialistic householders, which ends with griheshu griha medinam. How the materialistic householder, he spends his day, all he does is chase money with no higher purpose. It can be a purpose, you can make your money and support an ashram, that's good. But he's just chasing money for sense gratification, and in the night, he's just sleeping or he's indulging in sex. So, griheshu griha medinam, and he was talking about us. So, stormy time.
Can I add something? I met Satyananda Swami in Germany, Heidelberg temple. So I just have to ask him, just after talking, that how did Srila Prabhupada look?
How did
Srila Prabhupada look? His face. So he said, golden, effulgent, very bright. Although he was short, but everybody was bowing. There was a distinction.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was,
amazing.
When you looked at Srila Prabhupada, you couldn't fathom who you were looking at. It was he just appeared to be there but not there. Right? Not quite walking, floating. When he spoke, it appeared to be coming from another dimension. Yeah. But any more before I think it's late, 4:44. Any more questions about the four? Did you know about, I guess Ramadi Purush, maybe you've already seen that lesson, but did you know about the 4 phases and the 7 purposes? It's quite fascinating how Prabhupada, to launch his movement, he was trying to use Gandhi, alive or even dead. He tried to use Gandhi's philosophy, because everybody knew Gandhi. No one knew Bhaktivedanta Swami, so Prabhupada's trying to piggyback on to Gandhi. Prabhupada was a transcendental opportunist. He would use anything that was favorable for Krishna service. Okay, so when are we coming next? Let's give you a quiz. What's our next meeting time?
Friday.
Friday, what time? 7. Not 7:30. That was for the Tirobhav. So please be in your seats by 7, and we're going to look at this very amazing lesson, the Varnashram Challenge. And once you understand this, you will know more than most devotees in ISKCON know about why Varnashram has been so challenging, so confusing, so controversial. You'll know why. Because of the way things happen with Prabhupada and Varnashram. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Srila Prabhu ki jai.
Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai.